With 180 flights a day, 300 destinations, 70 countries, and 114 planes in our fleet, we move at the speed of need, supply, and global demand. As the leader in air cargo and passenger services, at every point and every day, this company, our values and protocols are seamlessly in motion. Across every office, continent, and altitude, 5,000 people are all in sync with our commitment to be our customers' most trusted partner. We move more than air freight. We move global economies, drive supply chain innovation, transport our military, medical supplies, and essential goods, as well as sports teams and entertainers. Our destination is all about going further, and today we have the momentum and muscle to go higher and further than ever before. Our name and logo tell a mighty story, one that begins and ends with the simple truth. We are Atlas, and we carry the world.
Hello and welcome to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University and this homecoming edition of Aviation Outlook. I'm Alan Stolzer, Dean of the College of Aviation at the Daytona Beach campus. Aviation Outlook features key aviation and aerospace leaders discussing the current state of business and what the future holds for this dynamic and vital industry. In this episode, we're welcoming alumnus and industry leader Jeff Carlson, Senior Vice President of Flight Operations at Atlas Air Worldwide. Jeff is responsible for all flight operations, training, flight dispatch, and crew scheduling, in-flight operations for Atlas Air Worldwide and its subsidiaries, Atlas Air and Polar Air Cargo Worldwide. Before joining Atlas, Jeff served as the Vice President of Flight Operations for Spirit Airlines and as Chief Pilot and Vice President of Flight Operations at Northwest Airlines. During his time at Northwest, he assisted Boeing with launching their 747-400 training program. Jeff earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Aeronautical Science from Embry-riddle and is a recipient of the university's Distinguished Alumni Achievement Award. Jeff continues to give back to the industry we all love by being a mentor to many pilots and by serving on several key industry associations. Jeff, welcome to Aviation Outlook. How are you doing today?
Well, thanks, Alan. It's great to be here. Doing well. Lots going on in the Atlas world and a lot going on in the industry.
Excellent. Well, I can't wait to dive into that and pick your brain on those topics. But we'll start out. Let me just ask you, every student has their own story about what led them to Embry-riddle. Talk about yours. What brought you to Embry-riddle?
Sure. And it's like so many, but I started flying or had an opportunity to start flying really early. I was 13, and I had an uncle who was a private pilot that we were flying a Luscombe off the farm, and that's how it all began. Just let's go for a ride, and off I went. And I got the bug early, and it stuck. But as I was growing up, coming up to age to get serious about the flying, my dad was searching around for me to find out if I could get a mentor to give me some direction. And we found a corporate pilot that was flying a Queen Air at that time, which was a pretty spiffy airplane. So it shows you how far back we're talking. And he was a recent graduate of Embry-riddle here in the Daytona campus many, many years ago. And he's the one that really made the connection for me to get from the farm to Embry-riddle, which is where it all began.
That's wonderful. I've had the pleasure of flying some of those airplanes you've mentioned. And you're still active in general aviation, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. I'm very active. We've got airplanes at home that we're flying, and I'm a DPE in the Rochester, New York FSDO.
Very good. And your airplanes at home, what are those?
Well, we've got a family of Super Cubs, and there's a whole story that goes with a family of Super Cubs, but we also have added a 182, and I've got another son that has taking our 180 under his wing. So the fleet covers the country here now.
I love tailwheel airplanes.
Yeah, I do too.
Well, you also have over 18,000 hours flying time on a host of different aircraft, including the queen of the sky, the Boeing 747-400. What's your favorite aircraft to fly?
That's a question you get often, or I get often, and I chuckle a little bit because it's hard for me to pick. I don't mind telling you that. And by far my favorite, and I've talked to you about this before, is flying that Super Cub in the backcountry of Idaho. I really enjoy the mountain flying. But I know the question you're asking me is the commercial side of the equation. And you know, when I got hired at Northwest Airlines, we were all hired as second officers, and that's we were flight engineers, but as pilots, you're a second officer flying the panel, initially on the 727, and then I migrated from there up to the DC-10 on the panel, the engineer seat. But my first flying position was in the right seat of the 757, so it was a big jump. For a couple of years, not flying actively, I was flying as a second officer, but then to go to the right seat of the 757, which was just a tremendous airplane, continues to be that way. It's a pilot's dream to fly. But that's where I started my flying commercially at Northwest Airlines. But there's another first in my background, and that's the 727, because that was my first captain's checkout, moving to the left seat. And that was truly a pilot's airplane to fly. You know, I longingly like to jump in that and fly it again, but they're getting kind of hard to find at this point.
Yeah, they are.
But then it was a privilege to round it all out by flying the Queen and the 747-400, and later the Dash 8, certainly as the top of the food chain there, and just a dream to fly. So kind of list of my favorites, and there isn't any one in particular, but they're all wonderful airplanes to fly.
Yeah, they're all strong candidates for being number one in anybody's logbook, aren't they?
Yeah, they absolutely are. And really enjoyed all of that time on them.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, Jeff, you've held many roles in your illustrious career. Can you share a bit about that career path? Talk about that career path and what led you to move more from the cockpit, from those beautiful airplanes, into a management role. What caused that?
You know, my path has always been tied to operations. I started and have always, as part of my career, had flying in mind. Flying, the airplane was always top of mind, but there were a number of leadership opportunities that came along the way. And how I got to them, you know, really began in the training department. I was always involved in training throughout my entire career. And generally, there was a challenge that was out there that was difficult enough that they were having trouble solving it. And those problems seemed to migrate towards me. And I'd been asked for the number of opportunities, leadership opportunities that I found along the way to take them on. And that's what led me to the leadership roles that came after. You know, it really began in the Airbus fleet as we had a number of challenges. We were one of the early Airbus operators, A320 operators, back in many years ago. How about if we do it that way? Many, many years ago. And some of the challenges of training crews that had learned in the traditional method to take on that Airbus philosophy was a little bit challenging for some. So it was my task to find a solution for that. And that led to other challenges amongst other fleets. And then, as you know, then leadership roles came after that. But it was generally because I was asked as problems manifested themselves, we solved them and went on to other challenges. So it was a work ethic that was involved, but it always centered around those problems and problem solving.
Yeah. Challenges do seem to find good leaders, don't they?
They always do. And, you know, when it comes to those leaders, you find them migrating to those challenges. Those are what energize those people. So
it's a mutual attraction.
Absolutely. We try to connect them all the time.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, some of our listeners, Jeff, might not be that familiar with Atlas Air's operations overall. Can you give us some broad brush explanation of what you do, what the organization looks like, and the scale of the operation as well.
Sure, sure. Atlas does a lot of things. We're a global provider of aviation goods and services. And that's a pretty broad statement. But what we do is we provide ACMI, that's aircraft crew maintenance and insurance. We also provide CMI. We have a lot of customers that provide the airplanes but have no way to operate them. So we provide the crew, the maintenance and insurance. We provide heavy freight lift. We also do express freight lift. We're now into e-commerce in a very big way. We're in the passenger side of the business as well. That came along in 2009. So we do military passengers, we do VIP passengers, and we also have a very active and successful aircraft leasing arm. So we're into a lot of aspects of the industry. So when a customer comes to it, we have all the tools to solve their problems. We're running about 200 flights a day, plus or minus. Depends on the season. We're into our busy season now, so we'll be above 200 flights a day for the rest of the year. We are the largest operator of 747 equipment. We have 58 747-400s and Dash 8s, 28 767s, 11 777s, and we round that out with our 737 fleet of 8 airplanes. So I'm operating 105 airplanes in the course of a day. We've got 9 leased airplanes as well around the globe. So we operate in and out of over 300 destinations. That's 70 plus countries. 6 of the 7 continents. I don't fly to Antarctica, but I do everywhere else. So we cover the world in a very big way every day.
That's amazing. And what does Polar Air Cargo do that's differentiated from Atlas?
So Polar was an acquisition early in the years of Atlas, and Polar came with operating rights, country entry rights that we have preserved over the years. So we have maintained 2 certificates under the Atlas brand to be able to take advantage of those rights. So that's the purpose of the Polar certificate.
Okay, very good. You are, as we mentioned, VP of Flight Operations. So you oversee flight ops, training, flight dispatch, crew scheduling. You've got a large portfolio under you. What are some of the challenges you have on a daily basis in that role, and how do you go about meeting those challenges?
At Atlas, every day there's a challenge. In a global operation, you just can't get away from some unforeseen, unplanned event that just challenges you and your team. Yep. In the world of challenges, we're faced with any number of events around the world. When you're running a global operation, it's just inevitable, whether it's weather or maintenance or volcanic activity. There is a challenge no matter where you're looking. The other day, we found that in Central Asia, we were running short of fuel. So, we have to solve for that when it manifests itself, and it's not something you plan for in the course of the day. In our world, we take an approach, or in my world, we take an approach that I call the Apollo 13 approach, where, you're faced with this unplanned challenge, and you bring your best and brightest around the table, and you dump your box of parts out on the table and say, okay, put together the solution. And it's really that kind of a mindset that we circle the wagons, per se, and then come up with the right solution for the task that's being challenged. It's never ending here, and it happens every day, and it's really an exercise that everybody's quite comfortable with because of those challenges that we face. During COVID, a quick COVID story, we would launch and the countries would change their entry restrictions depending on vaccinations or non-vaccinations and duration and all these things. They would change them while you were en route. So you'd launch with a game plan in mind, and then they would change those restrictions while you were transiting the Pacific or wherever to where you were going. So it's just always one of those facts that you have to deal with on a daily basis when you're running a global operation like this.
That's goodness. So changing mid-air, that poses some significant challenges.
Very dynamic here at Atlas, very dynamic.
Jeff, you were kind enough several months ago to bring an Atlas 747 to campus, and that was truly amazing. Students are still talking about that experience. So thank you for doing that. One of the things that I took away from that event was I saw how you interacted with people on your staff and how much they admire you and how they responded to you. So I want to talk a little bit more about leadership, how you view leadership, what are the essential skills, and how you apply those skills to your role in Atlas. So just a little bit more on leadership, how you view it, and give us some thoughts there.
Well, sure. And I spend part of my time in the classroom teaching leadership to new captains and up-and-comers as well. So it's a subject we talk about here a lot at Atlas, and it's important to us, especially because we do turn these pilots loose, the captains loose on the world with the keys to the jet, and the successes rides on their shoulders. So that leadership's really important. But in my world specifically, I firmly believe in leading by example. So I want to be in the dirt and the weeds and the mud with the rest of them. I'm not going to ask them to do something that I wouldn't do myself. Yeah. That's why it was important for me to fly as long as I could fly. I just got too old here. I don't know how that happened, but I got too old and they wouldn't let you continue on. But I flew for as long as I could, just so I could walk in the shoes of the pilots and the crews that I represented, and could bring those issues back to the office and solve for the challenges that were there. In the leadership piece too, I am very insistent that our teams or our leaders are very specific in direction and expectations. We want them to be not just assuming things or being broad in their direction, but be specific. So you would see that in, what we do here. You certainly would see that in me. I also encourage the leaders, the up and coming leaders, to lean forward. Certainly the new captains, they have to lean forward, be forward thinkers, and really lean forward into the operation in a positive sense. And don't be afraid to push that envelope a little bit, because it's that leadership that keeps the momentum going on so many things. And, don't be afraid to make a point. And if you're going to come to the table and make a point, be ready to defend it. And don't flinch. So many people I see come and they challenge you across the table, and you get into that debate, and you can talk them back. And no, if you believe in your position, if you believe in your point, come defend it and stand up for it. And that's the leadership we're looking for. But that's what you'll see here in our office at Atlas.
Excellent. That's a great point about not flinching. Have confidence in your point, and that means you have to have researched it well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I would imagine one of the challenges that you face in your particular industry is what you're going to do going forward with respect to airframes. What are the best airframes out there or on the drawing boards that can meet the needs of Atlas? Of course, the 747, there's nothing better. But at some point, I think they've rolled the last one off the line, and I believe you got that one.
Yeah, so we did.
So what are your thoughts about airframes going forward as you see the industry evolving?
So it's not an easy, straightforward answer. So a little bit to it here, but the 747 is quite unique. The special built freighter 747 and the Dash 8, because it has very long legs, long duration in flight, has that nose loading capability, which is really important for specialized cargo. And there's really nothing out there that's going to replace that in the short term. Now, the service life of the 747 will extend for quite some time, many, many years. Now, there are 747-400s that will approach the end of their service life. And, you know, there has to be a solution for that. There's really two out there now that are really worthy of the flying that airplane does, the mission that airplane completes, and that's the 777X that's coming down the line. There's still a lot of work to be done on that 777, and then there's the A350 freighter, which is scheduled to come out in another year and a half, maybe almost 2 years. Those two airplanes are certainly going to position themselves to carry the loads and be efficient in the same space that the 747-400 is. The Dash 8, the 747-8 will still be in a place all its own. So there'll be a long, long future for that 747. For those that want to fly the Queen, they're going to get that chance here at Atlas because that airplane is here for the duration. But the 777X is coming down the line and is certainly an airplane to be watched, and we are, as is the A350 freighter.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, they're two great airplanes, but there's just nothing as beautiful as that 747.
Yeah, it's a great airplane, that's for sure.
Yeah. Jeff, the air cargo business, like all aviation businesses, continues to evolve. It's evolved in recent years. What are the trends that you're seeing that have an effect on your business, and how are you reacting to those trends?
Well, the evolution of air freight is going on all the time. It has been since I've been here, and I'm a 15-year employee now. And when I got here, we were really focused on just heavy freight and the movement of heavy freight, but the business has really evolved because it went from heavy freight to express freight, and there's quite a competition in express freight. Most people think of the FedEx, UPS, but there's a DHL arm that's worldwide that really competes in a very big way internationally. And then domestically through Amazon, there was the introduction of e-commerce, which is a network all unto itself because all of us enjoy those packages on our doorstep the day after we order them. And there's only one way to get that done. But internationally, there is the equivalent of Amazon out there in a much bigger way. It's called Alibaba. And they have the China arm that we operate into, and that continues that e-commerce arm of that we're finding more and more in the industry. And then there was this development that happened during COVID. And during COVID, there were big backups in ports because they couldn't find people to work, and long delays. And shippers would put their freight on boats and they'd think they'd be able to get it to their destination in 3 weeks. And all of a sudden it was taking 6 months, 8 months, before they could unload. So these shippers then turned to cargo haulers like Atlas and wanted to add to their sea and trucking arms air. So we saw that in a number of customers out there, and MSC, the Mediterranean Shipping Company, is one that we're working with, and that really expands their reach, and they like that addition to their portfolio because there's a number of customers that they serve as shippers and forwarders that need just-in-time positioning. You think of pharmaceuticals, and pharmaceuticals have to be temperature controlled and time controlled, and they need to get them to destinations in a very fixed period of time, and that's something that we can provide. And as we provide it, we can even tell them what the temperature is of those pharmaceuticals as we're flying them to their destination. So it's a great relationship, and it's further development and evolution of the business, and we'll see more of that in the air freight world.
Yeah, that's amazing. And recent technology has made that kind of capability possible.
It just gets better and better every day.
Yeah. I want to shift a little bit toward workforce. We've had workforce shortages really across the aviation spectrum. pilots, mechanics, and others. Wondering what you're seeing from your standpoint with respect to that. It seems to be quite a challenge for all sectors. What are you seeing on the hiring front and the demand front in the coming years?
Yeah, well, pilot hiring is a topic that we talk about very, frankly, daily, regularly, but it's really daily. It's in the industry, it's more than that. It's also mechanics, and there even is a case being made for cabin attendants as well now. Yeah. But there's probably a bigger shortage of mechanics or maintainers than there are pilots, and the pilot shortage is just depending on where you are in the food chain of aviation, really it's going to be here for a long time. It's just has an effect. Now, we see, and we spent a lot of time studying this, we see the feed from the regionals being greatly impaired because they're having difficulty keeping all their airplanes in the air. There's a number of airplanes. Latest report I saw was greater than 500 that are parked because they just don't have enough pilots to support them. Mm-hmm. We're a mid-tier carrier, so we draw upon the regionals heavily, and so do the network carriers. Now, the network carriers sit at the top of that food chain, and they don't feel the effects of the pilot availability quite like we do or others. But there's definitely a pilot shortage, and you know, we're going to live with it for some period of time now. We still got several years to go through before there's any catching up. But there is some bright lights that we see at the end of the tunnel. You know, Boeing came out recently with their latest forecast, their 20-year forecast, and I may misquote the numbers a little bit, but they're looking for 650,000 pilots over the next 20 years, 700,000 mechanics, and I really don't know the cabin attendants, but I know they're north of 700,000. And then the Oliver Wyman team, another analyst group, went in and did a study, but then recently revised their study. You know, there's a demand for about 17 or a shortage of, let me rephrase that, a shortage of about 17,000 pilots a year. They've dialed that back to about 13,000 pilots a year. There's still a shortage, and they're big numbers, but we're seeing improvement there. And that translates over to what the FAA is reporting, with lots of certifications that are going on. We're watching ATPs, frankly, have doubled over the last year and a half, almost 2 years. So a lot of that was the effects, after effects of COVID. People had slowed down during COVID, but we're seeing the rebound. I know Embry-riddle is jam-packed with flight students and hopefully mechanics as well. But we're going to see the effects of that shortage, and we feel it here at Atlas, and the mid-tier carriers and the regionals will feel it for some period of time. The feed numbers, when I say feed numbers, the supply numbers, you know, especially for the network carriers, I think they draw about 75% of their pilot force from the regionals. So that's just a big drain. And we are right there at the same level. The next 15% I thought was an interesting statistic, because that came from the corporate group, which is a little bit bigger from the corporate group than I anticipated, and then 10% from the military. And of course, there's high demand for the military pilots just because of the skill set and the training they bring to the table. But there's not a large volume of those as they come out. And of course, the military is working hard to keep them in. So a little bit of tension between. But there is light at the end of the tunnel, but I don't anticipate we're going to see any relaxation of the constraints in pilot supply for a number of years.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Lots of good comments there. And I agree with you that the numbers really do suggest that the shortage of maintenance personnel is even more acute than it is on the pilot side. Pilots get most of the media coverage and most of the write-up, but the maintenance shortage is a pretty significant issue. And that demand, I would anticipate to stay very strong quite a ways into the future. You know, whereas on pilots, there may be rule changes downstream. that lower the demand for pilots. I don't see that happening on the maintenance side. So, and then the business aviation community you mentioned, they tend to they're falling back on being able to fully staff their operations as well. We've been talking to a lot of those folks, and there's pretty high level concerns in their sector as well, as you mentioned.
Yep.
We were, Embry-riddle was honored to be the first school to join the Atlas Air Pathway to Success program, as long as we're talking about workforce. That program recruits, trains, and hires qualified, for us, they're called aeronautical science graduates. Those are our professional pilot graduates. Talk about that, Jeff, a little bit, and what's the impact of that program? How do you see, as those programs mature, how do you see those helping your company address workforce needs?
Well, the Pathway Success program with Embry-riddle has been nothing short of a success, and we've only been at it for a little while together, and it is working out better than we had anticipated, frankly, at this early juncture. You know, what it is it's a direct path to Atlas for early career pilots that are approaching their ATP requirements, and we can then get them through the ATP and or ATP, CTP, and then their ATP, and then get them into the workforce through our 737 side of the house, and then quickly means within really 2 years, get them the choice, if they choose, to enter the wide body global arena that we operate in so much. It's worked really well. We see a lot of interest, frankly, and we've processed a number of personnel through it. It is truly the key provider of talent for this program for us. Embry-riddle has done so well. And I just think so fondly of some of the graduates. I probably shouldn't name drop, but we're so proud of Danielle Jones, who's a recent graduate that has come through the program and really set the bar high for those that come behind her. And we're inviting her in to take on some leadership roles, as she is really advancing well in the program, but all because of the success of that Pathway to Success program. We're really excited about. We're going to do more, and we'd like to expand it to some of the other disciplines as well. Frankly, I got a call from a recent graduate that wanted to get to work in cruise scheduling. He had a great background, and while not a direct Pathway to Success individual, we're going to funnel him through that same program. So he is armed and ready to take on the task, because he certainly is someone we're interested in.
Well, it's wonderful to hear, and we're certainly proud of that program and excited about continuing to grow it, and also to expand it into other domains. You know, we have not only maintenance, but airline operations center opportunities here, so dispatch, some other things I think we can work with you on in terms of helping kind of further develop that pipeline. So definitely interested in those talks going forward.
You know, we're excited about that as well, and we have already thought through, you know, virtual environments. So if they need to stay close to campus but want to expand their experience, we are set up and prepared to do that. So look forward to talking about that some more. Great.
Well, I'm guessing very few of our listeners would know this next point, which is that Atlas provides ground and flight simulator training, essentially, to Air Force One pilots. So that's Air Force One is a VC-25 aircraft, and it's Air Force One when it flies the President of the United States. But that says a lot about your training program, I think, and your safety culture and commitment to safety. So talk to us a little about that. How did that come about, and what does that look like?
So the Air Force One training really predates me. just slightly. It began in 2007, and we have a very active military cadre here at Atlas. Administratively is still as well as actively out flying, but administratively as well. And that's where the connection initially was made. And we put together our proposal and were tested by the Air Force and won the award. And then subsequently, for 2 renewals afterwards into our active contract, now we've hands down been their first choice. And we have very dedicated, focused instructors that work with them, and have very tailored program. As you can imagine, flying the president is a very specialized business, but that is what this contract's all about. And it's been very successful, and we're very proud of it. It went beyond that because as we became successful in our second extension, they then asked us to take on the cabin attendants as well, which is, as you can imagine, for the president is no small task. Yep. And so we also train the cabin attendants for the Air Force Order VC-25. You know, that's really been the tenure of 4 presidents, President Bush, President Obama, Trump, and now our current president, Joe Biden. So, you know, we've been out there for a while, and it's we compete for it every time the contract is up for renewal, but we have a good program here, a very solid program for them.
Well, that's a huge testament to that, and a strong point of pride for Atlas, I'm sure.
It's something that we enjoy talking about, no doubt about it.
Yeah. You know, something I think others may not know about as well is you not only fly cargo, but you do passenger charter flights. You transport football teams, including the Miami Dolphins, and I know you've had been in a lot of other areas as well with entertainers and so forth. And in fact, the 7-4 that you brought to campus was an executive configured aircraft. So, and it was just beautiful. Talk about that a little bit, the charter flights that you do. Who have you flown, and how much of the operation does that constitute?
So we're really proud of our passenger operation, as you highlighted. We got into it in 2009. There's a whole story that goes with how we got into it, but we ran what was called a private charter for an oil consortium out of Texas to their oil interest in Africa. And we did that on a scheduled basis 3 times a week. And that's how we got started in the business. But that opened the door for us for supporting the military and the military, or the transport of military passengers, and that's soldiers as well as their families, became a focus point for us. We've got 5 747s in passenger configuration, 6 767s in passenger configurations. 2 of those 747s, as you point out, were in VIP configuration. That really came from that oil consortium business that we started, but we have capitalized on that configuration with the football teams. We've got 5 of them now. The Dolphins, the Jaguars, the Jets, let me think here, the Broncos, and the Baltimore Ravens. So we're flying them around every weekend. So somebody's in the air. And, you know, we've done a number of entertainers as well. A quick story about that without dropping too many names, but there were a couple of big name entertainers that wanted to enjoy New Year's twice on New Year's. So they contracted with us, loaded up the airplane. We went to Sydney, Australia. They celebrated New Year's in Sydney. And when they were done, we launched the airplane all the way back to Las Vegas, and they got to celebrate it again.
Wow.
It's not a big portion of our business. We are predominantly cargo and freight, but it is an important aspect of it. And it's one we really enjoy. You know, we have 400 flight attendants here that support us, and they're very special flight attendants because they're trained and they're very proficient at taking care of this cadre of individuals. You know, an airplane full of football players sounds simple. It is not simple at all. And whether it's football, baseball, hockey, you name it. These cabin attendants are very, very, very special.
Yeah, I can imagine. You've been, this whole industry has moved toward, focus on sustainability. And I wanted to ask you about Atlas engagement in that area, those initiatives. So in terms of fleet upgrades, fuel management, investments, just give us a high level kind of thought into what you're doing in sustainability. Our students are really interested in that topic these days. And of course, you can't pick up an industry magazine without reading about sustainability. So what is Atlas' approach toward those initiatives?
Sure. And that's a really important topic for all of us. And it's an important topic for our customers. We get asked about it from the customer standpoint every day. They're as interested as we are. We have not only us in the leadership roles, but our owners are very focused on it as well. So it's something that we have certainly embraced for a number of years now, more than I can really count. We're aligned with the international, or most carriers that are aligned with IATA and A4A to be, working towards that net zero emissions by 2050. So everybody's focused on that. Yep. We have an internal target to reduce our emissions by 20% in 2035. Took me a second to get it, but there it is. And we're doing that through a number of ways. The Dash 8, the recent Dash 8s that we acquired are a step in that right direction. That they have a 16%, it's hard to imagine, 16% better fuel burn, less fuel burn than a 400. So the 400's very efficient as it is, but the Dash 8's even better. Wow. 777s are there as well. And the 777s, if you think about putting a 2-engine airplane on a 4-engine airplane route, there's value as well. So a lot of focus on that. In that whole discussion is sustainable aviation fuel, SAF, and how we're going to acquire it, where you're going to acquire it, because we operate in so many areas around the globe, and availability of that fuel and in the right logistics that go with it are really important to us. We recently invested in some software that we can utilize to help balance and track and show us availability, so we can work with our customers on it in the world of SAF. So a lot of focus on that. And then there's a whole piece on the ground equipment. So the ground equipment, it's interesting, on the polar side, we're at about the 50% mark compliance with either alternative fuels or electric vehicles, ground support vehicles. Not so good on the Atlas side. We've got to do better there. We're down just shy of 10%. So a lot of focus on converting those vehicles from fuel to from the diesel fuel or gas to electric or other alternative fuels. So a lot of focus there in the ESG world, and will continue to be. It's a strong point here at Atlas.
Yeah, a strong point, and throughout the industry as well. So not surprisingly, you're taking a leading role in some of those initiatives. So congratulations for that. You have such a deep understanding of air cargo in general, Jeff. So I'm curious about just getting you to kind of look forward the next few years, and what is the future of air cargo? How's it evolving? And what role Atlas will continue to play in that evolution?
Right. And we spend a lot of time thinking about that as well. And to your point, the world of cargo and freight and package delivery is evolving in front of us as we speak. In closer in, we're going to see some interesting dynamics in the cargo world that's really in the supply-demand side, capacity and demand. In the world of capacity, we know where all the current cargo freighters are. We know what the conversions are. We know, about where the 777X and the A350 freighter are going to be, with some uncertainty with delays, but it's kind of a fixed number. We know what those numbers are. And what you'll see over the next few years, and it's kind of a 5-year look, is a 1% growth in that capacity curve. So it's not a big growth. There's not a lot of cargo airplanes being put into the system to expand. And in that, I shouldn't leave it out, is the belly capacity of the passenger airplanes, which is a competitor, frankly. It's something we watch very carefully because that has a direct effect on a lot of the cargo availability that's out there. At the same time, though, the forecasters on the demand side see the growth around 3 or 4%. So we see cargo demand for that capacity going up 3-4% with only a 1% increase in the capacity. So we're going to see a big demand for freight with a difficult time getting airplanes underneath it. So we're going to see that unfold here over the next several years, and it'll be something very interesting to watch as the conversion houses will try to speed up to get airplanes turned out, while the large manufacturers, the Boeings and the Airbuses, will try to get new airplanes out there into the system. But they won't be able to keep up for probably the next 4 or 5 years. Beyond that, we have to always consider, this emerging, it's a little more than emerging now, drone technology. Drone technology is out there, more in the package delivery than in really freight hauling, but it's something that is certainly being contemplated. And then, there's another factor that we watch in the artificial intelligence world as they improve the technologies on these flight decks. And we'll see an attempt, I'm not sure how it'll all play out, frankly, to reduce the number of pilots in an airplane just because of the improvement in the technology in the autopilots and autopilot systems. And Airbus has got a great lead there that they are producing, and it is quite interesting to watch. Of course, there's a lot of, I guess the word is emotion around how many pilots you're going to put on airplanes, and that's not something we probably ought to dive into here. But the technology is going to be there, and it's something that's going to have to be contemplated in the cargo world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it'd be fun to talk about that at some length. Maybe we'll have to schedule another webinar to dive into that topic.
Sure.
Last point I wanted to touch on, and it was mentioned early on in our discussion tonight, and that is mentorship. You've had I know you have a passion for mentoring young people. You and I have talked about that. And I suspect our audience and alums and students watching the webinar tonight would be eager to hear about your own mentors, people who played a role in your career and helping you achieve the successes that you've had. Talk about mentorship in this industry and your experience with it.
Well, there's probably a few more important topics when you get to this portion of longevity, as I am in your career, as you can't get in the commercial airplane anymore. It's our job and our responsibility to inspire and attract those that come on behind us, and we're always looking for the best and brightest to get that done. You asked about who mentored me along the way, and I always start at the very beginning, and I'm so thankful for some family members that took me under their wing and just gave me a ride one day. And it was just a private pilot that had nothing more than private pilot experience. And oh my goodness, did that take off. But then I had parents that knew nothing about aviation, but could see that that's what I wanted to do, and helped me find the path here at Embry-riddle, which really allowed me to take off on my career. And then as you get into the career, you find people along the way. There's an individual in my Northwest life. His name is Noel Duncan, which you won't mean anything to anybody, but boy, he took me under his wing, and I can't tell you why. But early on in my career, and stayed with me all the way through, and until he retired, and stayed in contact. And he just gave me all of his vision and all of his advice along the way, and without the asking. And it just meant so much to me, and really had such a direct positive effect as I went through that. And, and then there's all these other leaders that you run into. I had the great fortune of working for Richard Anderson at Northwest Airlines. And, Richard went on to do great things there, but also at Delta Airlines. And just about everything he touched, he did great things. And what a just a wonderful leader, and a very inspirational person as well. And a person I certainly didn't run into, but I certainly admired Gordon Bethune, through the Continental years and all. But those individuals and the legacies they leave behind certainly are part of that mentorship path that anyone like myself would take. But now it's my job, and those that are like me, to take on that role and actively mentor those that want to get into this. And we are working hard in that effect. Absolutely. Very important.
Wonderful. And you really never outgrow a need for mentors in your professional life, do you?
Never, ever.
Any final thoughts you want to leave our audience with, or anything I didn't ask you? Do you want to make a comment on, Jeff?
Well, it's, being able to say that I came from Embry-riddle is such an honor, and has worked so well for me. I mean, my whole career really is grounded in this university and what it prepared me for. And I look so fondly upon the environment you're in right now, Alan, as it's done so much growth, and it's done so many more things than could have been done for me when I was there. That is truly a privilege to be able to look back and reflect and say I'm an alumnus of such a great institution. So I will always be at your service and at the service of the student body as they need to pick my brain on any of the thoughts that they have, but you just call upon me. It's truly an honor.
I appreciate that. Thanks so much for those comments. And we're really proud of the career you've had. An amazing impact on your career at multiple air carriers, and the mentorship you've provided young people, the leadership that you exhibit with your current staff, and I know your past organizations as well. So it's just been so impressive to watch, and that's why I've been looking forward to this conversation so much. So thank you. And to those watching, thank you for celebrating homecoming with us. And on behalf of the College of Aviation, I'm Alan Stolzer. Good night.